The Game of Zen explores the often overlooked ways in which professional, personal, and spiritual growth are interrelated. We dive deep into the life teachings of the Buddha and the mindfulness practices of Zen, revealing how they can help us dramatically expand our possibilities for wholehearted work, life, and play.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Game of Zen podcast. My name is Scott Berman, checking in from Philadelphia, PA. As always, I'm joined by my good friend, Sensei Paul. What's new out there in Boulder? How you doing?
Hey, Scott, it's good to see you again. Things are going well out here in Colorado. We had a little cold snap come in over the last week, but yeah, things are really good.
Cool. Well, it's cold here too, but I have to add that we had a pretty good week of football last week.
Really?
So,
I hadn't heard. What happened?
I'll tell you all about it. The Super Bowl champions of the Philadelphia Eagles. And
Congratulations.
it's really, thank you. It's so fun with this town, how excited everybody gets. And it lasts for a while. So everybody here's in a good mood.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy for you. I was rooting for the Eagles partly because of you. Being an old Giants fan, you know, they're interdivisional rivals, but I've really come to love that team. They're such a good team.
They are. And I think so today's episode is about staying calm in the storm. And you think about how many different ways that comes up. And if you do think about sports specifically, everybody talks about this flow state that athletes get in when the pressure's on and the lights are bright and it's the finals or it's a Super Bowl, and who steps up and plays really well. And the guys that keep calm during the storm are typically the best performers.
Jalen Hurts, man, that guy is so calm, incredible.
He is so calm. He really is. And he plays best in the pressure situations. The owner said that he's got the clutch gene, which I thought was pretty cool. But yes, his demeanor is very good. And then you see the opposite, where some guys just get into that situation and they don't perform well. But of course, we're not professional athletes, but we do deal with this on a daily basis in our professional and personal lives. And so I wanted to start off by talking about a term that we hear a lot when we read about Buddhism, and that's equanimity. And it's a lot of the early teachings of the Buddha, and it really is important to think about and incorporate into your practice. So let's start there, Paul. Tell me what that means and how it became so important.
Yeah, well, equanimity is kind of it's a big deal. You know, it's one of the four what we call brahma vaharas in Buddhism, which are these valuable mind states, you could say, or qualities of mind, heart mind. And it's more than just calmness. You know, it's actually a profound quality of heart mind that really can transform your life and transform your environment if you can cultivate it. But it does take some cultivation. You could say it is about calmness, it's about balance, but it's primarily, I think, about your relationship to externals. It's about not letting externals throw you off your center and finding your center within your internal environment. And we can talk a lot more about that and what that means. But that's fundamentally what it's about.
So, and I think there's so many different ways that this could come up. It really could happen 10 times a day with different things. So what are some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis that we need to be calm during?
Let me ask you.
Well, okay, I'll go first. So obviously there's work and there's business, and you're in business situations, and it's never smooth, especially if you're an entrepreneur running a business, starting a business, and there's all sorts of people that you're working with. And the more I found that if you're a leader, especially, the more calm and cool you are under almost every circumstance, the better you're going to be as a leader, and the more your team is going to follow you and want to work with you. We've all been around people that, like, quote unquote, lose it or lose their calm, and they're not as good. They don't perform as well because some external, to your point, something external comes in and it throws them off their game. Mm-hmm. So I certainly find that happens probably multiple times a day in work. But then there's also just with my kids and with friends and things like that. And so I just find that I've been practicing this for a long time. And the more that I can apply it to whatever happens, the better I can deal with things. How about
Hmm.
you?
Yeah, definitely so. I think the calm, when we talk about calm, we're talking about a quality, but a more descriptive, I think, term is centeredness, right? And I might have brought up in this podcast before, there's this study done by, I think it was the Booth School of Business about 7 or 8 years ago. And they canvassed a lot of people, like 12,000 people, about what was the quality they most wanted to see in their leaders. And they came back with something like 60 different qualities, but the number one most important, most popular, most desired quality that people wanted to see in their leaders was centeredness. Centeredness.
Mm,
And that's what equanimity is about. It's about being centered. You visualize the center of the cyclone, right? Or the center of the hurricane. It's that calm, still part at the center of the swirl of activity that's happening. That's really what equanimity is about. It's that, you could say it's the fulcrum point or the pivot point, but certainly the still point at the center of swirling activity that's happening around one. And that comes from an inner place, right?
mhm,
It's not external, it's an inner place. So what we access in meditation is this ever present, continuous, deep, fundamental stillness, silence, peace, and calmness that we actually
mhm,
all have intrinsically as part of our being. That's there. But we're not always in contact with that.
mhm.
Meditation puts us in contact with it, and a meditation practice cultivates that to the place where it's more continuously available within our day. So from that place, we are operating, and then no matter what's happening on the
Yeah,
outside, it could be calm, it could be active, it could be crisis, it could be whatever. If you're in touch with that place, that's
yeah.
what we're talking about with equanimity.
That's great. And I think with meditation, what I love about it is that sometimes I'll meditate in the morning and I'll think about the day that's coming and all the different things that might happen in the day. And then when they happen, whether it's a meeting or a Sixer game or something, a drive in traffic, whatever it might be, I feel like in a better zone. I'm prepared for what the day is going to bring. And some days bring surprises, some days don't, but you want to be ready. I guess that's
Mhm.
the point. Be ready for almost anything.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you know if you have your equanimity?
I think it's more after the fact, or I should say sometimes during, like, so something will happen and I'll realize that this is a situation where someone could get excitable or anxious or nervous, but and I'm saying in my head, okay, just stay calm and stay cool because this is happening. I'll give you a quick example from last weekend. I was in New York and it was snowing and I was driving and it was pretty bad out. And my friend, she said to me, "Oh," after a little while, she's like, "You're doing really well here. You're very calm. I'd be nervous here." And I was so during the drive, I was thinking, this is like a nerve. We were driving down a hill. It was
Mhm.
snow was blowing, and I'm like, okay, Scott, stay calm, drive slow, stay in the lane, whatever. So
Mhm.
I was thinking about it while it was happening, that it was a situation that required equanimity.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she pointed it out, like, boy, you're really calm. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I would, but the good news I think is I wasn't really just, it just sort of naturally happened. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the practice comes in, where, once you get to this point, it becomes easier to slip into that mode, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, like you, I can look back on a reaction I had, or a situation that I went through, and if I kind of look back on it, it's like, oh, no big deal. It's like, oh, I had equanimity.
Right.
No big deal, and that applies to highs and lows, right?
Right.
So you can even have a big success. You make a big sale, or you make a touchdown, or you have something that maybe as a younger person you might have just almost over celebrated. You kind of thought it was a big deal and you go crazy. And now, as you get older, you kind of look back and say, okay, well, that was good, but it's not like, my whole life is changed by that.
Right.
Likewise on the, the negative stuff, we need to apply equanimity both to the highs and the lows, right?
Hmm.
We don't want to over catastrophize, the crises or the difficult, challenging things that are happening to us, but we don't want to get overly attached to what we think are the good things either. All right. We
Right.
just need to be steady.
Steady as it goes.
Mhm.
So I think, and some people might mistake like calmness for passivity or
Mhm.
and or not reacting, and right. And how does Zen and the teachings differentiate between like real inner peace or just avoiding conflict?
Yeah, it's a good thing to be to take heed about within our own practice and our own lives, because we can become passive. But if you look at really good leaders, um, they are steady and level headed, but they actually act at just the right time, right? They don't hesitate to act, and the difference is that someone who's sort of wrapped up in events, who doesn't have equanimity, they're kind of acting constantly and they're overreacting constantly, so they're perpetually kind of trying to adjust in a reactive way. But the stillness, you could say, or the lack of activity that we associate with equanimity, is a very vigilant one in its own way. It's very responsive, and it's looking at, well, where do I need to make an intervention? Where do I need to step in? And yeah, if you're not doing that, then you're just actually being reactive by resisting, what's happening.
How do we practice this? How do we get better at it and to cultivate a better sense of calm? I'm sure that's something that it's built up in you over the years, and now you probably teach it to people. But what are some ways that people can really get to that point?
Well, I'll give you a cheeky sounding response, but it's the truth. Go through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Go through the hard stuff. You know, I mean, but before that is, obviously cultivating meditative mind, is number one, right?
Hmm.
And then, don't rest there, but, welcome challenge, welcome
Hmm.
adversity, welcome life. Don't work according to agenda and plan and expect things to work out according to your preferences and your plans, right?
Right. And so how do you teach when you're working with a student and you recognize that they need more calmness and they tell you something about work, like that, I'm sure that comes up, right? What is your advice to people to get better at it?
Well, yeah, meditation is about finding that, right? It's
Right.
about discovering that. So it's available all the time.
Right.
So, but it's very hard to access that in activity, right?
Hmm.
Like, just imagine you're in the storm, right? You're in a hurricane. Okay, you need a kind of a compass to find the center of the storm, right? So if we use this meteorological metaphor, you've got a meteorological map, and maybe you see which way the winds are coming, and you know which way, and maybe you can chart your way through the wisdom of the knowledge of the storm system itself, where the center is, and then you
Right.
move towards the center. Well, that's what wisdom traditions are, is they show us the map, if you will, of our minds and how they're working and how to find the center of our
Right.
own minds. So we chart ourselves to that location, we find that, and then we familiarize ourselves with that place. So when we find ourselves in the stormy conditions of our minds, then we
Yeah.
can find our way there.
I think there's a clear link with the mindfulness training and mindfulness practice really does help lead to the calmness, I believe. And I think it's partly because when you're being more mindful, you're not your mind normally monkey mind, right? There's seven different things going on. And like if you let yourself like run away with those thoughts, then it's going to cause more anxiety because you're worried about work or you're worried about something here and there. But when you're mindful, and you're just focused on cooking dinner or something, cleaning the dishes, then it has a calming effect. So it's sort of, do you feel like it sort of one leads to the other?
I do. Yeah. Meditation is about focusing, right? Giving your full attention to something, whether that's the breath or a question
Yeah.
on your mind or a mantra or whatever it is. So you're giving your full attention. And I think that's what you're talking about. In that giving of your full attention, you're cultivating a quality of what we call samadhi, which is the energy of concentration, which has this dual quality of being both relaxed and energized, right? In a beautiful harmony, we're not over relaxed to the point of collapse, and we're not over energized to the point of hyperactivity. But these are the places that we typically cycle through in our everyday life. Overactivity and collapse, overactivity and collapse, right? It's back and forth. We're cultivating from the center this concentration energy, which is both active and energized and relaxed and comfortable. And this can maintain. But we do this by paying full attention to what we're doing. Basic, fundamental mindfulness practice. And that cultivates that mind.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd love to hear some examples that how you've applied this in some storms and that have gone down in your life. Like, how have you applied this and how has it helped you?
Yeah, well, I recently had a family crisis, which was a medical condition for a member of my family, and something came to a head a few weeks ago, and we realized that we needed to get some treatment. And it was a treatment that wasn't covered by our insurance plan, so it was both a medical and a financial crisis. And I've had a lot of training in meditation, and my wife has her own not only meditation practice, but just being a mother, and in her case, a mother of 5, is itself a meditation practice, because you're called to very important things, right? You're caring. I mean, it's not always life or death things, but it's caring for the health of loved ones, these little beings that need our attention. So maternal mind is, one of the 3 qualities of mind that Zen Master Dogen says that we bring to our work. So
Right.
I like to say that mothers are kind of master meditators from the get-go, just with their ability to kind of multitask with heart and with responsiveness. So, both of us in our own way, we brought this responsiveness to say, okay, this is what we have to focus on.
Right.
It was clear, like everything else kind of went to the back burner, and our ability to just focus on what was needed was where the equanimity come from. It was just very clear what we needed to do, and we were able to do it.
That's great. And thank you for sharing that story. And I also know that just in normal times, you got a whole bunch of kids, bunch of pets, bunch of things, you got a lot going on in your home just to begin with. So when there's something that throws off the balance in the home, that must take another level of calmness that you guys put together to deal with it.
Yeah, it does. That well, let me ask you: are you cool under pressure?
I think so.
Yeah, I bet you are.
I am. I think I am, and I've been told I am by others, so I appreciate it.
And you've had medical crises in your life. You talked about a few weeks ago in our podcast, and you've had, you faced like the really hard stuff, which forced you to be kind of laser focused on the most important thing. Now, a lot of people, they haven't had, in a sense, that training, or maybe if they have gone through things like that, they've not dealt with it, very well. But this is how life will invite us into, being fully present to the hard stuff. And then when you're really present to the hard stuff, then it's actually easy to be present to the less difficult stuff. Although sometimes we can say, oh, well, I'm going to relax and I'm going to go on autopilot now. That's one of the risks, is that, oh, well, now that it's not life or death, I'm just going to go back to autopilot in my life. But you should never be on autopilot in your life. That's one of the rules of the game of Zen, is don't go on autopilot. You lose points.
Exactly. Yeah, you lose points in the game. So I'm glad you brought that up, actually, and I'll just share a quick story, because when I was diagnosed with the heart condition, which I actually was originally diagnosed when I was 12 years old, but when I was about 48, they told me I went to the regular doctor's appointment. He's like, we see something else. You're going to need an operation. I'm like, what? You're going to need open heart surgery. And I remember very vividly, like getting upset, of course, but then some calm washed over me before I even called family or told anybody about it. I was like, all right, I kind of sat down in a park. And the doctor was like, the bad news is you got a big problem there in your heart. The good news is we can fix it, and we're going to get you fixed, and we're going to watch you, and we're going to take care of this. So I kind of went through that in my head for the next hour after that appointment, and I calmed myself down, and I was like, all right, I got to deal with this. It's like, it's a game changer in your life, right? And then I started telling family members, but I also wanted to make sure I was really calm before I called my mom or my kids and say, hey, by the way, I got a problem here. And I didn't want them to get all upset. So I knew that me being calm would help them as well.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the equanimity and the calmness that you have in your own self can go out there. Like if I was freaked out about it, my kids would have been way more upset.
Yeah.
I did it. I explained it to them in a very calm manner at that point.
Yeah. That's why these brahma vaharas are so important, in Buddhism, is that they affect not only you, but they affect other people, and deeply. And that's why the leadership study, people are saying, I want my leader to be centered, so that, because it affects me so much. So yeah, it's very deep and profound impact, that these core benevolent states have, with equanimity being right at the top of the list.
I also think when you get through something like that and you realize that your calmness and coolness helped you a lot, that gives, I got that added to we've talked about this before. My spirituality started growing a lot back then. And then a couple of years later, I met you and it went to another level. But one of the things I recognized was that I did have that ability to stay calm in a difficult situation. And I actually made it through and I survived. And it made me stronger as a person. But it also, as you said earlier, it made other things seem very unimportant. Like when something happened at work that was like, and people were getting upset about it, I'm like, so it's almost like in my head, I'm like, this ain't open heart surgery. This is fine.
Literally.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happens. You go through stuff and you prove to yourself that, yes, you have this ability. And then to me, I'm like, let me get better at it. And then I started working with you, and it sort of grew, and that's been very beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. It's that bigger perspective, that kind of zooming out, that gives you more capacity, and that's what brings in the balance level, right? It's like it's easier for a big cruise ship to stay upright, just because of its girth, and its larger capacity than it is for a kayak or a canoe. Right, it easily could wobble and turn over and become unbalanced. But the cruise ship, so it's that zooming out and having that capacity to be a bigger vessel for your feelings, for other people's feelings, for things that are going on in the world. That is what creates equanimity.
Yeah,
is to be that.
Yeah, I want to kind of go back in time a bit to the early days of the Buddha and how this helped him on his quest. And he was working through a lot of things for years, and then all this stuff was going on, and he somehow maintained, the Eightfold Path and the calmness that he developed in his own practice before he actually went out there and gave it to the world. He developed this over many years. So how did the early Buddhist, philosophies then become a key part of this whole teaching?
Boy, I don't know if I can. I think maybe to answer what I think you're asking is, the Buddhist path took him originally into very strong ascetic practices, right? So for 6 years, he actually hung out with the hermits. That's sort of ridiculous to say, hanging out with the hermits. I think they sat for a while. Yeah. They would do their hermit thing alone, and then they'd maybe get together to, have a seed party or something, but they would talk with each other, coming down on occasion. But he did ascetic solo practices for 6 years, to the point where he actually starved himself, and he became
Right.
close to death with how much he denied his bodily needs. And then at that point, he realized, this is not the right path. I'm just going to die. It's not about transcending the body. And he actually remembered, like, growing up as a kid in his backyard, and he was really sitting under a tree, and he was really joyful, like ecstatically happy. And he said, any path that doesn't include that feeling is not the true path, or not the path that I want to follow. So he started giving himself sustenance and taking food and not going on the ascetic path anymore. When he did that, all of the hermits, they rejected him. They said, oh, you're not a real spiritual person anymore because you're not transcending your body. Well, that's when he had his big breakthrough and really dropped away body and mind and realized that he was the whole universe. And he said,
Mhm.
all beings everywhere. So from that point is where he kind of developed the Eightfold Path, which is kind of a whole matrix of
Right.
living in a way in accord with the truth of oneness, but that is also a path to awakening our oneness, recognizing that we don't experience ourselves as being one. And equanimity then comes in as a valuable state to cultivate in order to awaken to that oneness by manifesting that oneness.
Yeah. That's cool. I think that when I learned about the Eightfold Path and started to apply it to everything that I could, it definitely increased my calm nature. I think I was already in a pretty good spot, but I started thinking about right concentration and right meditation and right view and so on. And I think that in any situation that came up, I would think, okay, right speech here, okay, and that would have a calming effect on me, because I thought
Mm-hmm.
in advance of what I was going to say next, whether it was a
Yeah.
business meeting or something else, right? But also just the idea that right concentration and meditation and mindfulness will lead to a better state of enlightenment. And it also helped calm me down, no matter what was going on in my monkey mind.
Yeah. Well, would you say that, when you were exposed to the Buddhist path, like, life became very interesting in a way? Like, you saw that there were consequences to your actions. You saw that there were ways that you genuinely could cultivate these different minds and kind of slowly transform yourself.
Yes.
That puts this whole, life business into a
Yes.
bigger and even more kind of interesting and mysterious perspective, right?
Yes.
And perhaps that the bigness of that's like, wow, life is like bigger and more interesting than I thought it was.
Yeah.
That produces equanimity, because that's that bigness I was talking about, right? That it's a
Yes.
bigger cruise ship that you're talking about. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, there's everything is included in this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a question. Is something like that, at play for you?
Absolutely. It absolutely has helped me exactly like that. And I think about the cruise ship analogy, because the seas are not always calm. So one day the
Right?
sea, it'll be a smooth sailing, and then another day it'll be a storm, and the boat will be rocking back and forth. And then the next day, and then I think about like the waves coming in. So the waves are big, they're small. You got to ride them no matter what wave comes to you every day. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that over time I've applied this, and there's always going to be another wave, and there's going to be another storm. How do I handle it better next time?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Mm-hmm.
little by little, I've handled like big things in my life, good and bad. And my level of equanimity has grown, I think, and the practice helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me as well, finding the Buddhist path was something that gave me this really big perspective, on my life. I think before that, I thought things seemed to be troublingly random, and
Yeah.
where's what's this all about? Kind of, and
Yeah.
like, I see, well, I could have a personal story and I could personally attain stuff and accomplish stuff, but in a bigger picture, what is this all about? And there's a I think a fundamental agitation or unease that comes along with that viewpoint, right? It's like it's a very individualistic, it's
Yeah.
all personal in a sense, right? When you don't see how you're connected to a greater story, a greater unfolding of this life. And I think a lot of our society right now, a lot of Western society, maybe a lot of global, cultures right now, they're kind of afflicted with this very individualistic mindset where what is the meaning? What's the purpose? What is this all about?
Yeah.
Are we really connected in this way? And
Yeah.
various spiritual traditions give, answers to that, and they try to provide vehicles for people to feel that. But without that, there's a fundamental dis-ease, a fundamental unease, and it's
Yeah.
difficult to have equanimity
Yeah.
when in that condition, when it's like, what is going on here with all this violence and disruption and chaos and weirdness and selfishness, that sometimes affects me and sometimes doesn't,
Yes.
and sometimes I manifest and sometimes I don't, right? But then you get a wisdom tradition like Buddhism, and this is how it worked for me. It gave me a framework to understand all of this, as well as a path to kind of
Yeah.
grow within it. And equanimity comes from that.
Yeah. I also really enjoy helping other people, or, just talking about this with other people. And I love what you do with your coaching, because you're bringing those skills to people and really, it's really helpful and important that you're helping other people. And the world is crazy, and it's very easy. I find that I meet people every day and I wish I could just sit down and talk with them and get them to calm down about it, about whatever, and including my own family members. It's like, but it's hard, so how do you kind of bring that out? And by the way, I just want to say, I appreciate anyone that's listening. Thank you for listening. And I really enjoy talking about this so that other people can bring it into their own lives. So how do you do that on a daily basis, whether it's family or your work clients?
Yeah, right. Well, you said, like, how do I get them to calm down?
Yes.
So you can't really get someone to calm down, because if you exert any sort of force on them, then that's gonna get wrapped up in whatever it is they're activated about, right? So I think number one, manifest your own centeredness. Okay, that's by
Yes.
far the best thing you can do. All right, and in fact, it gives them an anchor, right, to like, oh, okay, the quality that he's manifesting, I gotta find that. Okay, but I can sort of hook to it, or anchor to it until I get there. So even if you're just like sitting in the corner and just observing, not sleeping, but observing and listening, and somebody, you see that person in the room who's just present and centered, can have
Yeah.
an effect on a whole room, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so number one is to be it. And then
Right.
number two, there's kind of different ways you might be able to consciously, work with someone. You can ask a question, or you can maybe try to bring in a perspective, like, well, let's just look at this,
Yeah.
in a bit different perspective. That might work. Now, I had a Dharma brother who tried a technique, which was, they had a boss, and this person worked at high level at PepsiCo, right? He was a divisional regional manager of IT for PepsiCo, ran like half of the North American region, so very high level position. And one of his colleagues, or I think bosses, was like really upset and activated about something, and
Mhm.
really angry, and he chose to like actually engage with the anger. Like, is, oh my God, you are right about that. That is not okay. That is
Right.
terrible. And by joining his boss with that, it actually
Calm,
de-escalated it.
calmed them down.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I think I was thinking of Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about interbeing, and
Hmm.
how we're all connected, and whatever energy we put out there will affect somebody else. And I think about it in little things, like even when you're driving and you're in traffic and somebody, just cuts you off, or someone, beeps at you, honks at you, like move over. And then I'm like, thank you, have a nice day, and it's like, I'm not, I don't want to engage in that person and get, like get all angry with them. I mean, I am from Philadelphia though, so, it might happen once in a while. But the point is, like, I understand that my calmness might calm them down too. So it might be
Yeah.
a little different from your story, but like if somebody's upset about something and they see me not going along with it, it also might de-escalate in certain ways. I find that with work a lot. When people get upset, I used to have a business, and I got my boss and partner one day, he said something very nice to me. We were in a big meeting, and he's like, something was going a little kooky, I forget. And he's like, you know what's good about Scott? He's unflappable. And I was like, wow, like I've never been called that unflappable before. I was hugely complimented. And I said something to him after the day. I'm like, I never thought of myself as unflappable. He goes, you know what? All these people are freaking out about this and that, and you are staying very calm. And I'm like, thank you. And I that was one of the first times in a business situation where I realized how my projection of being calm in that situation helped my employees.
Yeah.
And people recognized it, and they kind of wanted to be on my team a little bit, because I wasn't going to flip out when little things went wrong.
Yeah.
So that was a valuable lesson.
You know, I've seen this a lot in myself and others too. People who are centered and other people call them calm,
Right.
they don't see themselves as being calm.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's like I'm just present.
Yes.
That's really what I am. And actually, I do have strong feelings about what's going on, right? But what I'm doing is I'm just not like stirring it all up. You know, I'm just fully present here. I don't have all of that emotional storm going on. But it's never, you know, it's not like even that noteworthy, you know, to us who feel that way. So I've been called that. Oh, you're always so calm. I kind of like, really? Not really, but
right.
I guess I get.
I am.
I get what you're getting at, but
right.
It's more about really just being present, which is
right. Yeah. But I think that you, and given all of your training and all the teaching you've done, you have established a higher level of this, and you have the gift of like putting it out there to people, which is really nice, and it's so helpful, and again, it's personal and professional. So there's all sorts of things that come up that are on both sides that you really need to apply this to.
Yeah, definitely. Centeredness, you know, you learn to be centered in your meditation practice, but then you learn to be centered in every moment of your life, right? Every situation, every relationship, every engagement, you know, you can practice centeredness. And then this incredible like insight, you start to have insights about people, you start to have creative ideas that come up just from being present, because you're not up in your head with your analytical mind, you know, judging people or trying to fix things or trying to analyze things. Just from that presence, you kind of see what's needed.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I'm always fascinated by your story, of your personal story, how you were single for many years, and then you got married and had a whole bunch of kids. All of a sudden, you were put into this, you know, into this environment where there was a lot more going on than you were used to. And I'm sure that this is where you said to yourself, probably, okay, I got to like enter this home with all these kids and new wife, but I got to be calm and be myself. So did that come up a lot when you first got married?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mentioned it in my Dharma talk to my group a few nights ago, is that, you know, I really know why monks of old did not become householders.
Right.
They didn't get married, they didn't have families, and they didn't have jobs, you know, and that was very conscious, so they could meditate, you know, for many hours a day for the rest of their lives. But I consciously chose a different path.
Yeah.
I did have my meditation at the front of my life. So I call it the front wheel of the three wheels: self, work, and others, the three sacred contracts. And I did have my spiritual path and as the front wheel, but I didn't ignore the other two. So I did have relationships, and I did have a work life, but I never, you know, got married or had kids. I always kind of kept that like that. But then I resolved, you know, a lot of my questions in my spiritual path. I became a transmitted Zen teacher, and lo and behold, at that point, I met the person who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, and she came with 5 kids.
Right.
So I wasn't expecting that, but I was welcoming, you know, this level of engagement. I had no idea how much, you know, it's like 10 times more than I dreamed of, but which is great. You know, I've got a big smile on my face because I had this attitude of bring it on. So just bring it on. I want to bring on all the messy complications of a relationship and family life and parenthood, and just live and engage in this way. if I hadn't had, 30 years of meditation experience, like before
Yeah.
jumping into this, I don't know
Yeah.
how I would have
I
handled it.
might
I
have gone as
really
well.
don't know. But I do know that it's been such a blessing,
Yeah.
in order to bring that quality, to bear in my family now.
I also think it's really, you guys have such a great spiritual bond, you and Arya, because and you probably bring the calmness to each other too, as partners. And that's also really important, that when you're with somebody in a relationship, that you're on some sort of same level with this. You can't be completely on opposite ends of this. And I actually have had an experience where I was dating somebody, and she was definitely not as calm as me. We were a little off on that scale. And it's after a while, it started to come up more often, and where she would just get very anxious about things. And she would almost like get mad at me for not getting upset or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, this is just me. It's like, well, so I think that in with personal relationships, it's good to be in the same ballpark with this, right?
It's very good, and I really don't like the word calm, so I'm going to
Okay.
drop it and go with more like less reactive or
Yeah.
non-reactive. Okay, but also to be responsive, and that's where our reactivities is where we get into a lot of dis-ease, unease, trouble, suffering, creation,
Yeah.
with those reactive systems, that when we're in a relationship, we trigger each other in our reactive systems. And
Yeah.
then it can get really, it can blow up.
Yeah.
Our reactivities can blow up and get reinforced. Um, so the less reactive we can be in relationship, the better, the more healing and the
Yeah.
more connected the relationship can be. But it does get to be kind of tricky, because one person who perhaps is reactive is going to react to the person who's less reactive. The
Right.
fact that they're less reactive, in a way, like if they're manifesting calmness, let's say, but they're interpreting it as, well, you're not taking me seriously.
Right.
You're not getting what I'm putting out there,
Right.
right? I'm fucking angry and you're not
Yeah.
seeing it, or I'm
And you're
feeling
not.
disrespected.
Right.
So, we're actually called relationally, to be, non-reactive but responsive to the other person, at very deep levels. And it's very challenging. It's a whole
Yeah.
spiritual practice in itself to do that.
It sure is. And another challenging thing is raising children. And I think that a lot of times, and it's happened dozens and dozens of times over the years, when something would happen, anything, I think your children like look at you as a parent. And if you're getting really upset about something, they're going to get really upset about it. And the opposite is
Yeah.
true as well.
That's right.
So I found that there was many situations. I have two girls, and they were teenage girls at one point, right? And there was things that happened, and they would get upset, and I would try and stay as calm as I could be, and I just in order to calm them down too. And the other thing is impermanence. Like whatever's happening right now that's going to make you anxious or upset, it's going to change, and it's going to be over, and today's going to be over, and tomorrow's a new day. So I think that the idea of impermanence also helps with staying, centered and calm in all these situations.
Yeah, definitely. So, Arya is just amazing, being a mother of 5, at letting her kids have their feelings, right?
Right.
I came in late in the game, and I'm like learning that, and I'm like, I have feelings about their feelings, and you're a father of two daughters, so I suspect you've got a much better skill than me in learning that, right? It's like, if you react to their feelings,
Yeah.
then things are going to kind of go sideways. But if you can really allow and listen to their feelings, and meet them in some way, that's really the path of kind of growth and connection there. And that's
Yeah.
that's something, isn't it?
It really is something. It's
Yeah.
something good. It really is. This has been a great chat, Paul. I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Oh, I'm happy to be here with you, Scott. Good to resume our podcasts, and may everyone be equanimous.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Paul. And as usual, please check out the Zen at Work newsletter. And I just want to add that reading is a really good way to get better at this. And I love getting Paul's content. It's really great. Social media, you can find him very easily. And you put out so much good stuff. And I learn something every day from what you put out. So thank you for doing that. And of course, if you're interested in coaching, please contact Paul as well. He's definitely taught me a lot. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate you, the listener, for tuning in today. And we will be back again soon with a new episode. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration into Zen Buddhism and its transformative influence on work and life. We hope you'll subscribe, share, and comment wherever you get your podcasts. May your journey be one of continuous growth and mindful living. From all of us here at Game of Zen, wishing you peace and prosperity on your path ahead.